Hi, shalom friends. One of the most beloved figures in the Chumash, in the Bible, is the patriarch Abraham with his beautiful wife Sarah. And everything that we know recorded about them, both from the Midrash and Talmud and from the Chumash itself, is exhilarating. I mean, such an incredible couple. First of all, how dynamic they are. They're able to spread the word of monotheism, teach a new religion, destroy idols, break a rigid way of thinking, and introducing the concept of a personal God to millions. I mean, that itself is astounding. But we find him as a fighter. We find him as a person of great hospitality, person of great kindness. And it seems that he and his wife got along perfectly well. They were a true dynamic couple dedicated to disseminating the message of God. And all of these stories and the dramatic encounter with angels that promise him a child at the age of 100 and Sarah's 90, a miraculous child who's called laughter. He brings laughter to them, he brings laughter to the world. All of this we find it easy to teach. It is so inspiring. It inspires us, and we could share that inspiration with others. Until we come to one story which people have told me that they find very difficult, not only for them to relate to, but to teach it to children. I say, what story about Abraham and Sarah do you find so difficult? And they say, the story of the binding of Isaac. They just can't relate to this. A beloved father is told to take a 37-year-old boy, whose name is Isaac, Yitzchak, and to go to a mountain and to offer him as a sacrifice. And they just don't get it. Yes, it's only a test, and it didn't happen, and Hashem promises that He'll never again subject the children of Abraham to such a test, to the test that was given to Abraham. But they just don't get it. A loving God, how can He do that? And I often try to sympathize with their difficulty, but I ask, why are you asking in terms of God? Why don't you think about it in terms of Abraham? How did Abraham, or Avraham in Hebrew, how did Avraham hear this command? Did he hear it as a terrible, awesome burden that he has to fulfill? The Talmud says an interesting thing. When they were walking towards this mountain, Avraham Avinu went with the joy that one would associate leading your son to the wedding canopy. He didn't do this out of duress. And he was not willing to subjugate his feelings and allow his natural feelings to disappear. Instead, he would act cruel and without mercy, and he would slaughter his son. He went with joy. He went with the feeling that I am going to fulfill the will of the Almighty, and there's no greater privilege to do so. Well, let's imagine the feelings of Isaac. And as it's very dramatically described, they're going together, and Isaac looks at his father and he says, "Father, I see a knife, I see wood, but where's the sacrifice?" And the father looks at the son and he says, "My son, God will show us." And the son understands what that means. That means God, if he is the one that is going with his father, and his father is ready to offer a sacrifice, and God does not give a replacement, that's him. And Isaac himself, Yitzchak himself, goes with equal joy. Vayelchu shneim yachdav. They go together. A father to slaughter, a son to be slaughtered, And both are walking and preparing themselves with joy to fulfill the will of God. What's difficult to teach about that? And people just raise their hands in exasperation. What do you mean, what's difficult to teach about that? Who could do that? It's impossible. Why even go there? Okay. Now I want to fast forward almost 4,000 years to the secular calendar of 2014. And do you know what keeps some of heads of state in a constant state of anxiety? It's people that are leaving from, especially the UK, younger people, from France, and even from the blessed USA. Younger people are leaving the land of plenty, the land of democracy, the land of liberty, and they're becoming terrorists. They're joining a fanatical group. They call themselves ISIS or something of the like. And they're going and leaving, forsaking everything that seems to be rational and normal. To do what? To give up freedom to serve in an army which claims to be serving God. And surprise of surprises, young women living in a land where womanhood is being appreciated are going to go to a place where they know they will be treated just one notch over a slave, where women are degraded and not appreciated, not respected. Why are they doing this? And this is a question that all of our brilliant analysts cannot answer. They don't understand. And some ridiculous statements such as, well, they feel alienated, they follow Islam, it's a Western country, they don't feel part of the country. Rubbish. Literally rubbish. That's why they're leaving comfort to have a life of self-denial. I'm not going to answer the question. I'm merely going to point out that younger people especially are looking to sacrifice. Younger people are looking to live for something higher and maybe something more noble. And as much as we convince ourselves that if you give a younger person a good education and a car and an attractive boyfriend or girlfriend, and you provide with them unlimited credit card, you will have a healthy, self-aware individual. We are wrong. They want challenges. They want sacrifices. They want to know that they're doing something which is not ordinary. In this particular case, of course, it's evil and wrong. But the concept is fascinating. In my thoughts, I was thinking about perhaps 500-600 years ago, but I still think it even applies today. Imagine you living in France or in Spain, and you're a Christian, and your son tells you he wants to become a priest. Now, especially in Roman Catholicism, a priest? It's not easy to be a priest. You have to take a vow of poverty. You stay in a monastery. You sleep on wood. You speak very little. You're given very little freedom. And it's a life essentially of deprivation. How many parents interfered? On the contrary, we have a priest in the family. Gladly and happily, they would look at 3 sons and 3 daughters, farmers and cobblers and tailors and maybe a soldier. and say, but we have our one son who has given up the world for God. And guess what? It was a noble thing. They were proud of him. And people aspire to that. Where did we lose this concept where a person gives up some comforts and something easy for something far more rewarding, something eternal? I live in the Bay Area. It pains me when sincere people are thinking, what can we do to hold on to our youth? How do we keep them Jewish? How can we encourage them to identify with Judaism, with our heritage and culture? And they come up with these wonderful ideas. Let's make a beautiful community center where they could swim, where they could play basketball, where they could learn ballet dancing. Let's do everything possible to give our youngsters the best possible life. Jewish humor, Jewish food, if there is something like that. But to ask them or to introduce them to one day a week, a weekend, where they're not going to go out and party. Instead, they'll spend the day with family, heaven forbid, to eat with family, and then to spend the rest of the time with community and to actually study? No, you can't do that. These poor kids are working so hard in school. They need the weekend. And then to tell them that there's a diet, which has nothing to do with how many calories. It has to do with when you eat, you are either getting closer to God or further. Dietary laws, the laws of modesty. No, we can't do this. We're going to lose them. We have to make Judaism as comfortable as possible. Let's take out as much as possible of the demands. Let's just make it beautiful, easy. In fact, if we go send them to Israel, we should take them to the Western Wall. I mean, it's a historic place. But show them that in Tel Aviv, we have nightclubs, and we have beautiful beaches, and we have high-class hotels. We're real human beings. It's a pleasure to be a Jew. But don't mention sacrifice. Don't mention discipline. Don't mention restriction. They won't do it. They'll run away from it. And then today, we see over the last couple of years, we see actually a trend differently, where a college education is not the end of it. People college educated are willing to die for some type of a religious ideal, even if it's wrong. But they think it's right. And we see people giving up beautiful homes and attractive spouses and wonderful, comfortable environments to travel across the world to join a group which speaks in the name of God, though unfortunately they don't act as God wants them to. Why? I think this is a challenge to us. I think it's a reminder to us. I think instead of saying, how can I teach the story of Isaac listening to God and willing to sacrifice his most precious and dearest, I think that's what we have to teach. We have to remind people that this is something that we are capable of doing. And indeed, Abraham and Isaac did it happily and became fathers of a great nation. My friends, challenge yourself. We have to go beyond our comfort zone. And if we have friends, don't judge them. Don't say they're not ready. I can only express to them the silly days where Jews have fun. That's the time they'll relate to. But to expose them to a rigorous thought, a challenging thought. I'm scared. They're not ready for that. How do you know? I'm not advocating forcing anything. I'm merely pointing out that man and mankind, and particularly Jewish people, are ready to hear a message of God. It has been said that a sociological rule is what the son tries to forget, the grandson tries to remember. It was spoken about the immigrants. Immigrants came to this great country, and their children were embarrassed of their parents, spoke with a heavy accent, did not have higher education, so they tried to forget very much of where their parents came from. And they raised their children, the third generation, to be proud and loyal Americans. And the third and fourth generation wants to remember, Granddad, where did he come from? What did Grandpa do? What did he study? What are those ritual objects that we remember vaguely or see in a picture? They're ready to embrace what the son has thrown away. Friends, let's go together as a family. Great-grandparents, grandparents, children and their children. Let's reabsorb the message of Torah, challenge ourselves, and by doing so, we will truly grow, not only spiritually, but even physically. Shalom.